This is the story of one of Britain's biggest ever crime scenes. I knew I'd have to get up early to catch criminals in the act.
Alexa, stop.
And so I awoke at an uncivilized hour close to dawn. I was on the trail of something remarkable, a crime of monumental proportions, literally reshaping the landscape and causing untold environmental damage. But I needed to caffeinate before I talked to an imaginary passenger like a madman. England has a new mountain in the heart of rural Oxfordshire, and unlike most mountains, it turns out that this one is made of rubbish. I wanted to visit Oxfordshire's newest and arguably greatest tourist attraction for myself to understand what had happened here. Just how big is this mountain of trash and how much danger does it really pose to the environment? But officials are reluctant to allow social media influencers to crawl about in a giant pile of rubbish, so the site has now been locked down. I'd have to find another way to see it. Oxfordshire is an unlikely place to find a new mountain, consisting mostly of fields, students and posh people. But as Inspector Morse would tell you, appearances can be deceiving. In a hidden location, concealed from view but right next to the A34 for convenient transport links, a massive criminal enterprise unfolded, dumping vast quantities of waste that otherwise would have cost millions of pounds to dispose of properly. This was an industrial-scale operation, not your usual fly tipping. The criminals will have posed as a legitimate business, taking on contracts from commercial organisations or local government agencies to dispose of their waste, charging them full price, but then dumping it all in this quiet, secluded corner of Oxfordshire. The impromptu tip is right next to the headquarters of Thames Valley Police in Kidlington, but they don't seem particularly interested, preferring to hand over responsibility for investigating the crime to the Environment Agency, very much Britain's version of the FBI. This is a truly monumental crime scene. From the measurements that I took with the drone, it's about 170 meters long. To give you some idea, that's similar in length to a cruise ship or to the Gherkin in London if it were to fall over. At around 12 meters wide and at least 5 or 6 meters deep, judging by the size of some shipping containers that were handily parked nearby, I estimated that its total volume is somewhere around 10 to 12,000 cubic meters. To put that in perspective, an average bin lorry in the UK tops out at around 27 cubic meters. It would take 500 of those bin lorries to fill a landfill of this size. The contents are mostly plastics, card, paper and other forms of household and commercial waste according to the Environment Agency. And this has been moved here on an absolutely industrial scale. Whoever did this would have made hundreds of thousands of pounds in profit. To clean it up properly would cost millions. In fact, it's estimated that it would take more than the entire annual budget of Cherwell Council. Rubbish has been accumulating at the site since at least June, as far as we know. The Environment Agency were alerted in July. They sent somebody to the site on July the 3rd, but a court order to close the site didn't happen until late October. And that's a pretty big problem because of this stuff. The site lies on a floodplain surrounded by the gentle meandering of the River Cherwell, which ultimately feeds into the Thames. The southern end of the rubbish comes right up to the water, while its western edge is flanked by an agricultural drainage ditch that feeds straight into the river. Britain's rivers are already under considerable strain from pollution. Very few of them rate highly for water quality, especially in areas with a lot of farming. We don't know for sure what's under all of this waste, and so the potential for harm is enormous, which is why the Environment Agency have declared a critical incident at the site. But the truth is that when I visited, there was little to prevent rubbish reaching the water, or vice versa. and while a man has been arrested now, not a single person from any agency was visible at the site.
We know that this is organised crime because, well, clearly it's a massive crime and obviously it had to be organised. It would have taken hundreds of trucks carrying rubbish back and forth to fill a site of this massive size.
This didn't happen overnight. This is what the site looks like in April 2024. I've marked out the river because the label on the map is actually wrong. That's a drainage ditch. The site is a remnant of an ancient field that was bisected by the construction of the A34. The eastern corner is overgrown with scrubland, but to the west of the road lies a secluded area screened off by trees. In theory, a footpath marked in yellow crosses the site, but it doesn't really connect to anything. At one end it emerges on the main road behind a crash barrier, while at the other end it terminates in the middle of nowhere with no parking nearby and a barely visible sign hidden in a bush. These people weren't going to be troubled by passers-by. Street view imagery from September 2024 shows a small farmer's gate, but that was clearly widened and tarmacked to allow access for heavy vehicles, the work happening on a major road just outside of Kidlington. By June 2025, massive earthworks had already been completed with earth piled up around the sides of the tip. You can even see a lone digger on Google Earth, oblivious to the camera capturing them from afar. And by July the 11th of this year, much of the site has been filled. Aerial images from 4 months ago look very similar to the site today, although tipping apparently continued until very recently.
Now, the Environment Agency first sent officers to the site on July the 2nd, but it took until October the 23rd for a court order to be obtained shutting the site down. And it wasn't until the end of November, after media reports showing the sheer scale of the problem, that finally the site was completely locked down. Now, of course, that brings us into winter. It takes us into the end of November, and fears that the rubbish might fall into the River Cherwell have been overtaken by the realization that, in fact, after heavy rains, the water is rising up to meet the rubbish.
It also means that for months criminals were visiting the scene of their crime, continuing to dump rubbish under the noses of the Environment Agency. This seems like a massive failure and a missed opportunity to catch the culprits. After all, it's pretty easy to secure a camera to a tree and watch for suspicious activity.
No cameras were put on the site. No people were placed to stand guard. No fencing was put up. That didn't come until the site began to receive media attention towards the end of November.
A recent Lords report on previous incidents was absolutely scathing about the Environment Agency's response. They said that it is difficult to conclude that incompetence has not been a factor, pointing out that we have heard credible evidence of numerous specific examples of the failure of the Environment Agency to pursue repeated reports of serious waste crime. They were similarly unimpressed by the lack of interest shown by the police. We live in an era of unprecedented surveillance, captured in hours of footage and gigabytes of data every day. An era when a woman can be fined for pouring a cup of coffee down a drain, and yet criminals can drive fleets of trucks down a main road, dump thousands of tons of rubbish, and the authorities seem unwilling or unable to stop them until it's far too late. Creating the pile was an act of asymmetrical warfare, far cheaper to build than to remove. The local council can't afford the millions of pounds it would take to dispose of it. The Environment Agency claimed that it's not their statutory responsibility. In theory, the criminals themselves should pay, but it's doubtful they even could. Signs from the council claim the footpath will reopen on December the 9th, but that seems unlikely. In all probability, Oxfordshire's newest tourist attraction will still be there next summer. And so, the mountain stands as a towering middle finger to the idea of British state power, a testament to bureaucratic impotence, and a mockery of the theatre of mass surveillance. It is a great decaying pile of everything our civilization discarded, standing in silent judgment, posing one simple question. Are we up to the challenge of moving it